today I want to get down to earth, like armchair neuroscience philosophy. I'm a futurist at a couple different companies, and I wrote a book all about technology quotient. But to do that, I had to understand, okay, I'm going to write this book on tech stacks. It's going to be stale in 2 years. Every company's going to get acquired. There's going to be all this M&A popcorn, and it's not going to make sense. So I thought, well, what I really have to be thinking about is how do people learn how to leverage technology stacks? And then what are the channels that are going to matter in 5 years and 10 years? And so visual prospecting is this super big thing. I almost started my whole training thing on the Venn diagrams that you're probably familiar with. So look, we can get a lot of the points on the bottom, but one of the cool ones is mirror neurons. We have this version of our brain is 40,000 years old, but took millions of years to evolve. And I don't want to challenge your worldview. If you believe the world is 4,000 years old, more power to you. But what I am trying to say is our brains aren't really different from 1950. The new normal, it's the same brain. And like, if you smile, they smile, and that's empathy. You feel bad. You can actually feel the emotion. If someone frowns, or you feel that emotional wave come off. So what we had is, prior to the pandemic, we can go to events and, talk to someone at the bar, or break bread, have a dinner. We can't really do that now. And I think a lot of this came out of, I had a friend of mine whose dad had financial advisors, like $500 million. And I was just talking about him, the power of face to face. And he never does anything sensitive without having the person in his office face to face. And then we as sellers have to do like calls where it's sort of faceless, and we do these Zooms and it's 2-dimensional. It's harder to kick off the mirroring. So I really encourage everyone to be thinking about using your face and your image and video prospecting and video drops and video type technologies. It's far more effective than email. It's actually just proven by neuroscience. I know you love the sequences, and I do too. Use them also, but you can't rely on just cold calls and digital alone. That's my opinion. That's not coming from Vidyard. That's coming from me as a consultant that trains thousands of reps to be top reps in the world. Let's get into some of this fun stuff. Okay, I created this idea of technology quotient for sales. It's actually from Psychology Today. It's a fusion of human and machine. We have IQ, right? We can improve our IQ by studying, by neuroplasticity of our brain. We can do lumosity, these Sudoku, and we get smarter. We can get smarter. We can improve our EQ. We can be more empathetic. We can learn to actively listen. We can care. I don't know, like maybe if you can't improve your EQ, maybe you need psychotherapy. I don't know. There is a way to improve it, right? TQ, how do you get better? In a world where all these AEs have these tech stacks, and they're like, oh, the SDRs will use all the tech stacks. Well, the truth is there's all these universities for these platforms, and you can learn. It's like Excel. You probably use 5% of Excel. If you just got incrementally better at Excel, learn some pivot tables, some macros, it's kind of amazing what you could do. So, the thesis of my work is like everyone has a tech stack. Like my mom, to log into Zoom, she's got to have a Gmail account. She's got a Facebook and a LinkedIn. Now, getting facile with the tech stacks that you have is a technology quotient problem. So I've developed the world's ever TQ test. Everyone will fail the test. That's part of the fun. You take it again. I have a bunch of professors and scholars and neuroscientists and people who are creating this thing, and we can develop our TQ. And what I'm doing in my communities is I'm creating sales borgs. And there's a bit of a revenge of the nerds element where it's like sales borgs, but what I'm trying to do is I'm helping the humans become more like a machine, and I'm helping the machines become more like a human. See what I did there? Let's keep going. So visual processing, this was on the prior slide. Basically, visuals are processed 60,000 times faster than words. And when I came up with this insight, it was more like, you're tired, it's late at night, and you're kind of squinting to read a book, and it's starting to blur. Like, even if you have perfect eyesight, and then you go outside and like you go for a drive, you got to pick something up, and like the trees and the stars, everything's perfectly clear. Your brain doesn't get tired, but it's actually very hard. I have a 6-year-old daughter. It's so hard to learn how to read, especially English. I mean, there's like 100 different exceptions. Like the Romance languages make sense. Our language, it makes no sense. So you spend all these years trying to read all these little symbols. And so like 90% of what the brain is taking in is visual and retaining. So like doing email-based sales it's really heavy for context switching, and it tires out the brain, and it actually triggers like the fight or flight sequence in the lizard brain, like the amygdala. There's the system we have, right, that's going to outrun a buffalo and like protect our family. And so when we send these big text-based only emails, it actually creates a fight or flight. And that's why you see these F tracking curves. You've all seen the F curve and designed it for the F curve. And they're snacking and they're like, should I delete it? Should I delete it? Is this a stranger? Is this bad? Should I run? And they're like, it's like running from a buffalo. Most of what like if you just go to HubSpot best templates and you send one of those, you're going to trigger fight or flight on the prospect. So let's not do that. And let's talk about things like Venn diagrams, or sending a video, or a video with a picture, or a video with a customized message on a coffee cup, or whatever it might be. I love building GIFs. I love visuals. And so that was the big realization for me. There's a company called Dogpatch Advisors in Silicon Valley that was really doing this, like coding every email, and every email is like rendering code and different imagery. You're thinking, well, how do you get through the spam gate? Right? Because like my tombstone, like I'm hit by a truck tomorrow, a few people celebrate, book still gets out, a little rim shot humor. And what would I say? I'd say email is visual. 20 years, 50 years, email is about the words, the template, what you write. Nope, email is a mechanism to deliver a visual packet of information. What's a great way to do it? A video. Okay, so some of this is about video prospecting, but a lot of this is just about neuroscience hacks, right? I am a person that was a former VP of sales. Because I was always just like a beast at the top funnel, they'd be like, great, you get to run this team of 5 and keep your number. And we want you to run the SDR team, and we want you on the phone every day. So I was like, working 90-hour weeks, and I was still doing this. But what I noticed is like running these 6-figure deals and 7-figure deals is there's a certain point where the seller is like following up, persuading, where the customer turns and they decide to buy. And then they start driving it. And they're saying, oh, I got to get my procurement done. You got to talk with my boss. There's a polarity where you're pushing on the rope, and then the traction kicks in on their side and they push back. Well, I started to find in the tonality of a first call through active listening and through some of my techniques. So I do these cold calls where on the first call, they talk 95% of the time. So there's this Gong research that came out that it's 30 to 40%, and no one had used my framework before where you pitch later. I've noticed like Josh Braun embracing this now. What I find is if the prospect's talking the whole first call, it creates trust, it reduces friction, and it reverses polarity. And I call this vampire theory. Basically, if you take your hand, there's no way you can move your hand unless you first decide, lift your hand. You can't move your hand without deciding. To understand everything about sales from a neuroscience perspective, until they have desire, until they like emotionally decide to buy, like they love to buy but hate to be sold. So what I'm doing by using active listening or using visuals is I'm allowing them to become interested. And in moving your hand, you barely make a decision, then you move your hand, but there's that pre-decision where you decide. So in the calls, I'm provoking them and listening to them, and they're like, wait, what, who are you? Wait, what's Salesforce? Like what? I wait for that magic moment, because the old thing with vampires is that they can't come in unless you let them. You have to invite them over the threshold. This is one of my favorite concepts is selective awareness. This is like your best friend gets a Volkswagen Jetta, and then you just see Jettas everywhere. You're like, I never knew how many Jettas are on the road. It's just like Jetta everywhere. So check this out. Why do you email people 5 to 12 times? Why do you get in their inbox repeatedly with these visual messages? Why? They're not going to respond, but guess what? Right now, your brain is a forgetting device. It's most remarkable what your brain can forget, not what it can remember. Every subject line in your email box, you read. You don't think you do, but your brain's that powerful. Right now, within your peripheral vision, you're taking in millions of colors, you're cataloging everything, and you're seeing everything. You don't know you are. It's like you're like a human iceberg. You're like this rudder taking in so much more information neurologically than you know, and you're filtering it for safety, for protection. You're focused on this screen. So as you start a prospecting campaign and you start showing up in their LinkedIn feed, inside a LinkedIn message with a video, in their email with a video, with the visual, you're getting nothing. It's not true though. Something happens. Their vendor screws up. They suddenly think of, oh, I need a CRM. Oh, I need analytics. I need AI. And then it triggers. They start to see your email. Magically, you've been dripping in there, and then it begins. So that's where I dial into the abyss. Like people are like, okay, how many times do you call someone? I've called people 50. I've left 50 voicemails. Like I'm aggressive with how I prospect. let's say that you open an email and you make a joke. Well, don't just copy the joke from a template, make your own joke. So I go, intro, humor opener, and then I go like social proof, mention like what does the text or the visual represent? And that's the heuristic. And it's just like a meta. It's just backing up off of the messaging and the communication. A scotch and be like, what is the purpose of that puzzle piece in the communication? And that's like when I train people, it's like I train people on meta frameworks, right? So you could take my methodologies and you could filtrate Josh Braun or Beck Holland or scripts from HubSpot, and you can mix and match. Emails should look like text messages, right? You've got Facebook, Instagram, Snap, WhatsApp, the speed of processing. Can you give me some takeaways here, Tyler, as far as like in neuroscience and speed of processing video, or any kind of quarks about the way that a video versus a text is taken in?
I think there's the basics on, when you do watch the video, there's all the information coming in, of course, visually and audibly. We're looking at the human face as a source of trust, which is a big part of how we, of course, evolved. The mirror neurons that we talked about, if somebody actually clicks play and they see you and you're smiling and you're bringing positive energy, it brings it back to them. And of course, people in a positive state of mind are then more likely to continue to engage in that and, hopefully respond. So there's all those bits to it. And I think there's also the memorability of many of these things in terms of how we process visuals and store in long-term memory. So all those little pieces just come back.
You get an ad unit. It's called 18 words between the subject line and the preview text. It's like old conversion. I tell the story about Marissa Meyer. This investor would write her to 32, 27, 25. Every day she'd get an email. And that was how many words were on the Google site. So what I'm trying to do is this. I'm trying to catch someone viscerally between the subject line and the preview text. And I'm trying to convert them off that without them even opening the email. So I'm not saying, hope you're doing well or nothing. In these uncertain times, nothing. No pleasantry. I just go right to it. I'm like, hey, John, this company got that. Like, I am packaging an ad unit to try to get a click. As they scroll, I'm trying to get a click. Even a conversion. My famous one is I got a hold of 300,000 contacts in a CRM. I was going to an event, it was a massive global event, and I put like, hey, quick queue, VIP list, who should be there from your team, all in just the subject line, nothing, an opt-out link. And, I got 700 responses in the first hour. But some of the people that got back to me were the founders and CEOs of billion-dollar companies. It was an automated message that looked like a text message. I don't know if anyone has ever used outreach to send thousands of people a one-word subject line. Maybe. I've never heard of it. I've used it. Let's see. Emails should be visual, so they should contain things like videos. Do this. Have a video, and in the video, hold up a diagram. That'll really get the brain going.